My dad ordered me to skip my final exam to watch my golden sister's kids. I agreed. Then I showed up anyway. When Mom saw the photos, she texted, "How could you?" My response was simple. So here's the thing about being the reliable one in a family full of people who only see you as a convenience. You don't realize you're being used until the day they finally ask for the one thing you can't give. And when you say no, suddenly you're the villain in a story they've been writing about themselves for years. My name's Jenna Whitmore, 22 years old, third-year university student majoring in finance. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible engine that kept my family running while my older sister Brooke got to be the star of the show. Brooke's 3 years older than me, married with 2 kids, and somehow still the center of everyone's universe. Meanwhile, I've been quietly building something for myself in the margins of their chaos. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. Until they needed me to tear it down for their convenience. Let me paint you a picture of how things work in the Whitmore household. My parents, Frank and Diane, worship the ground Brooke walks on. She was the golden child before that term even existed on the internet. Cheerleader in high school. Homecoming queen. Married her high school sweetheart Greg at 22. Popped out 2 kids by 25. In my parents' eyes, she checked every box on the perfect daughter list, while I was still figuring out what boxes even existed. Me? I was the quiet one. The bookworm. The kid who stayed in her room studying while Brooke was out living her highlight reel life. My parents never said they loved her more. They didn't have to. Every decision, every family gathering, every holiday, every emergency somehow revolved around Brooke and her needs. Her wedding was a 3-day event. My high school graduation got a card and a pat on the back. When Brooke had her first baby, my parents took 2 weeks off work to help. When I got accepted to university on a scholarship I'd worked 3 years to earn, my dad said good job and went back to watching football. I was just the backup plan, the utility player, the one who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained because complaining meant being difficult. And being difficult in my family meant being forgotten even faster. I'm telling you all this because what happened 3 weeks ago didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final drop in an ocean I'd been drowning in since I was old enough to understand that love in my family came with conditions. And those conditions always favored Brooke. The pattern was always the same. Brooke would need something. My parents would volunteer my time without asking, and I'd go along with it because fighting back meant getting labeled as selfish, ungrateful, or dramatic. After a while, it was easier to just say yes, until it wasn't. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my long days. Classes from 9 to 4, then study group until 7, then home to review for my corporate finance final. This exam was everything. It was worth 40% of my grade in a class I needed to pass to keep my scholarship. Without that scholarship, I couldn't afford to stay in school. Without school, I had no future. At least not the one I'd been building quietly, carefully, for the past 3 years while everyone ignored me. I'd been preparing for this exam for months. Flashcards, practice problems, study groups 3 nights a week. I'd turned down parties, skipped movies, missed birthday dinners. Everything was aimed at this one test. My professors knew me by name because I was always in office hours, always asking questions, always pushing to understand the material better. This wasn't just an exam. It was the foundation of everything I was building for myself. I was in my room going over practice problems when my mom knocked on my door. "Dinner's ready," she said through the door. "Your father wants to talk to everyone." That was code for Brooks coming over with something to announce. Sure enough, when I got downstairs, my sister was already at the table with her husband Greg, their 2 kids running around the living room like tiny tornadoes. My dad sat at the head of the table looking like he was about to deliver a State of the Union address. "Sit down, Jenna," my dad said. "We need to discuss something." I sat. I always sat. "Brooks got an opportunity," my mom started, her voice dripping with that reverence she reserved exclusively for my sister. "A huge one. Greg's company is sending them to a conference in Austin next weekend. All expenses paid. It's a networking thing that could really help his career." She paused like she was waiting for applause. "Isn't that wonderful?" I nodded, waiting for the part where this became my problem. "The kids," Brooks said, twirling her fork like she was already bored with the conversation. "We need someone to watch them. Mom and Dad have that thing with the Hendersons, and everyone else is busy." She didn't look at me when she said it. Didn't have to. We all knew where this was going. That thing with the Hendersons was a dinner party my parents had been planning for 2 months. I knew this because I'd helped my mom pick out the napkins. She'd asked my opinion exactly once in my entire life, and it was about napkins. Looking back, I should have known that was a red flag. The only reason she included me was because she needed another opinion to validate the choice she'd already made. "So we were thinking," my dad said, leaning forward, "you could stay here and watch the kids. It's just for the weekend. He said it like it was already decided. I felt my stomach tighten. This weekend, the weekend before my final exam on Monday. I have my corporate finance final on Monday, I said. I need to study. This exam is worth 40% of my grade. Brooke laughed. Not a small laugh, a big one. Loud enough for everyone to hear. The kind of laugh that's designed to make you feel small. Oh, wow. Look at her pretending she's busy again. She turned to our parents with that smug smile she'd perfected over decades of being the favorite. Relax, Jenna. It's just one exam. My kids actually need you. There it was. Her needs were real. Mine were pretend. My dad didn't even look at me. He slid his phone across the table like he was passing a verdict. Jenna, final. Cancel it. Family comes first. You can retake exams. Your sister can't retake motherhood. Everyone smiled like it was reasonable, like it was kind, and something inside me went very, very quiet. Not defeated, just quiet. Because this wasn't the first time my life had been paused for hers. It was just the first time they asked me to erase something that had my name on it. My future. Stamped in black ink on an exam schedule I'd been carrying for months. The old me would have nodded. The old me would have swallowed the lump in her throat and said sure. The old me would have sacrificed another piece of herself on the altar of family harmony. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the 3 years of silently grinding while no one noticed. Maybe it was the scholarship I'd earned through my own effort, while Brooke got a car for her 16th birthday. Maybe it was the realization that if I canceled this exam, I wouldn't just be delaying my graduation. I'd be proving to myself that my life would always be negotiable. I looked at my plate, took a breath, and when I looked up, I made sure my face showed nothing. Years of practice had made me good at hiding what I actually felt. I'll handle the kids, I said softly, eyes on my food so they wouldn't see what was burning behind them. Brooke leaned back, satisfied. See? Jenna gets it. She always does. She turned to Greg with a little smile, like she'd just won something. My sister's the best. What she didn't get, what none of them ever got, was how much it cost to always be the one who gets it. How many pieces of myself I'd carved off and handed over just to keep the peace. How empty that feeling gets when you realize no one's keeping track. No one's going to return the favor. No one even remembers that you sacrificed anything. The rest of dinner was noise. Brooke listing schedules. Nap time at 1, snacks at 3. Which cartoon kept the youngest calm? My dad adding rules. Make sure you don't leave the house. We don't want any surprises. Surprises. Like I had ever been unpredictable. When dinner finally ended, I went upstairs to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed with my phone in my hands. I stared at the exam hall address on my confirmation email like it was a secret doorway. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from clarity. I could choose myself. I packed my bag slowly. Calculator, student ID, the blue pen my professor said brought good luck, even though I didn't believe in luck anymore. Just timing and courage, and how long you could hold your breath before choosing yourself. The weekend arrived like a slow-moving storm. Brooke dropped off the kids Friday afternoon with a diaper bag the size of a suitcase and instructions that could fill a textbook. My parents left for the Henderson dinner prep an hour later. I was alone in the house with 2 kids under 5 and a decision that felt bigger than any exam. Saturday passed in a blur of cartoons and chicken nuggets. I played the part, made lunches, read stories, put them down for naps, and through it all, I studied in the margins. 3 a.m. with flashcards, 7 a.m. with coffee and practice problems. Every stolen minute poured into the exam. Everyone expected me to skip. Sunday was more of the same. By evening, the kids were fed, bathed, and asleep by 8. I sat in the kitchen and looked at the clock. My exam was at 9 Monday morning. Brooke wasn't due back until Monday afternoon. I had a choice to make. Monday morning at 6, I got up. Got dressed in the outfit I'd laid out the night before. Packed my bag for the 3rd time, checking everything twice. The kids were still asleep in the guest room. I'd set out breakfast for them on the kitchen table. Cereal in bowls covered with plastic wrap. Juice boxes. A note explaining that I'd be back soon, written in big letters with a smiley face so the oldest could read it to his brother. At 6:30, I called my neighbor Mrs. Patterson. She was 73, retired, and had helped watch us when we were kids. I'd known her my whole life. She was more grandmotherly to me than my actual grandmother had ever been. I told her there was a family situation and asked if she could check on the kids for a few hours, maybe stay with them until I got back. She said yes without hesitation, promised to be there by 7:30. I gave her the spare key and every instruction I could think of. At 7, I walked out the front door. The air felt different outside, sharp, awake, like it was watching to see what I'd do next. And somewhere between the front steps and the street, I realized this wasn't just an exam I was walking toward. It was the moment they'd never forgive me for. And I hadn't even done it yet. The bus smelled like cold metal and someone's cheap cologne. My knee kept bouncing, not because I was late. I wasn't, but because I kept waiting for my phone to explode in my pocket. For my dad to realize the house was too quiet. For Brooke to call from Austin sensing something was wrong. For someone to finally see the gap where I always stood and notice it was empty. My phone stayed silent. Outside the window, the city slid past in gray blocks and wet pavement. I watched students climb on and off the bus at each stop, clutching folders, whispering formulas to themselves, living inside futures no one had tried to cancel for them. They had no idea how lucky they were to just go to their exams, to just live their lives, without family members treating their dreams like inconveniences. At a red light, my phone buzzed. My heart stopped. Dad, where are you? Another buzz. Dad, the kids are asking for breakfast. Mrs. Patterson says you left. What's going on? Another. Dad, don't do this, Jenna. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I typed nothing. Not yet. There was nothing I could say that would make them understand. Nothing that would make it okay. So I said nothing at all. When the bus stopped near campus, I stepped down into a wind that smelled like rain and coffee and something sharp and awake. My shoes splashed through a shallow puddle, and I laughed under my breath. A small, broken sound. Like I'd forgotten how. Like my body didn't quite remember what it felt like to do something for myself. The exam hall was already buzzing with nervous energy. Hundreds of voices, anxious and alive. Students comparing notes in the hallway. Professors walking purposefully toward their stations. The whole building hummed with the electricity of people about to prove what they knew. I took my seat in the third row, middle, exactly where I'd planned weeks ago when I first mapped out this morning in my head. My phone lit up again. Mom, your sister is in tears. Mom, how could you leave when they needed you? Mom, this isn't who we raised. Mom, call us immediately. That last one stung. Not because it was true, but because it was almost true. They had raised someone who would have stayed. Someone who would have swallowed her dreams and smiled while doing it. They just didn't realize that person had slowly been dying inside for years. And this morning, I'd finally let her go. The invigilator cleared her throat at the front of the room. Phones off, bags under your chairs. We begin in 5 minutes. I slid my phone into my bag, heart pounding so loud I was sure the girl beside me could hear it. For a second, guilt tried to drag me back. The old reflex. The old leash. 22 years of conditioning screaming at me to get up, apologize, go back, be useful, be good, be the Jenna they expected. Then the papers landed on my desk. My name was printed at the top. Jenna Whitmore, Corporate Finance Final Examination. And suddenly I wasn't thinking about crying toddlers, or angry parents, or Brooke's perfect life that I'd been holding up like scaffolding. I was thinking about everything I had built quietly, in the corners they never looked at. 3 years of early mornings and late nights. Scholarships earned through effort, not favoritism. A future that belonged to me. A version of my life where I wasn't just the support staff in someone else's story. Pen scratched paper, pages turned. Time moved forward without permission. The questions were hard. They were supposed to be. But I knew this material. I'd lived in these textbooks for months. While they were planning conferences and dinner parties, I'd been preparing for this moment. Every formula came back to me. Every concept clicked into place. I worked steadily through each problem, showing my work, double-checking my math, using every minute I'd been given. Halfway through the exam, I felt lighter. Not happy, not safe, but real. Like I'd finally stopped holding my breath after years of living underwater. When the exam ended 3 hours later, my hands were numb from writing. My head was spinning from concentration, but my chest felt like it had finally taken a full breath. The invigilator collected our papers. Students around me exhaled, groaned, started comparing answers. I just sat there for a moment, letting it sink in that I'd actually done it. Outside the exam hall, sunlight broke through the clouds in thin gold lines, like the universe was taking my side for once. I stood on the steps of the building and took out my phone. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, dozens of texts, each one angrier than the last, and one message from Brooke that made my stomach drop. If something happens to my kids, this is on you. My fingers hovered over the screen. I could feel them waiting on the other end, furious, righteous, ready to make me pay for choosing myself. Then I opened my camera, turned it toward the campus sign behind me, and took a photo. Proof I had chosen something they never chose for me. I didn't send it right away. I knew that once I did, they'd have the picture to hang their villain story on. I'd be the selfish daughter who abandoned her family, the ungrateful sister who couldn't be counted on, the cautionary tale they'd tell at dinner parties for years. But honestly, I was tired of being the ghost in their narrative. If they wanted to make me the bad guy, at least I'd give them something real to point at. something true, something I could be proud of, even if they couldn't understand it. I sent the photo, campus sign, blue sky. My exam slip still in my hand. No caption, no explanation, just truth. The replies came fast, faster than I expected. Mom, are you serious right now? Dad, you chose this over your family? Brooke, I can't believe you'd be this selfish. My kids were alone. They weren't alone, I typed back. I arranged for Mrs. Patterson. They were safe. You just didn't get what you wanted. Selfish. That word had followed me my whole life like a warning label I was terrified to earn. And now, with one photo, I'd finally ripped it off and worn it anyway. I'd been called selfish for wanting things, selfish for having boundaries, selfish for existing outside of their needs. And now I was being called selfish for taking an exam that determined my entire future. Fine. Let them think I was selfish. At least I'd finally have something of my own. My chest burned, but something else rose with it. A strange, steady calm. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop fighting yourself. I typed one sentence. I chose what you always told me mattered. Education, future, responsibility. Then I put the phone in my bag and started walking. Behind me, campus life kept moving. Laughter in the distance. Cars rolling by. A street musician playing something too hopeful for how my stomach felt. I walked until my legs shook, until the adrenaline drained and left only quiet, until I found a bench by the library and sat there watching students pass, living their normal lives, having no idea that mine had just exploded. That night, I went home. The house was dark when I pulled up, just past 8. No cars in the driveway, just shadows and silence, and the feeling that everything was about to change. I let myself in through the back door, heart pounding with every step. The kitchen was empty. The living room was still. Mrs. Patterson had texted earlier that Brooke had picked up the kids around 4, barely spoke to her, and left in a hurry. Then lights snapped on. My parents sat in the living room like a tribunal waiting to deliver a verdict. Brooke stood by the fireplace with her arms crossed, eyes red from crying or anger or both. Greg was nowhere to be seen, probably smart enough to stay out of family drama that didn't directly involve him. Nobody said anything at first. We just looked at each other across the distance I'd created by choosing myself for once. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable, then painful, then almost unbearable. Then my dad spoke, calm, controlled, dangerous in that quiet way of his. Do you have any idea what kind of position you put your sister in today? I set my bag down slowly, taking my time. You told me to skip my exam? Mom cut in, sharp as broken glass. We told you to help your family. I looked at Brooke. You never asked. You just assumed. You assumed I had nothing important going on. You assumed I'd drop everything. You assumed my life was empty enough to fill with your needs. Her mouth trembled, but her eyes hardened. Because you always say yes. Because you've never once pushed back. Because that's who you are. Dad leaned forward in his chair. And today you embarrassed us. Your mother had to leave the Henderson dinner early when she got Brooke's call. Brooke had to cut her conference short. Do you know how that looked? Do you know how it reflected on us? And there it was. Not concern about the kids. Not worry about my education or my future or whether I was okay. Just optics, image, how things looked to people who didn't live in our house. The Hendersons' opinion mattered more than my career. Brooke's networking mattered more than my scholarship. Appearances mattered more than I ever did. I passed my exam, I said quietly. I think I did well. No one smiled. No one congratulated me. No one asked a single question about how it went. Dad shook his head slowly. That's not the point. And there was the sentence that had ruled my entire life. Not the point. My achievements were never the point. My sacrifices were never the point. Only my availability mattered. Only my usefulness had value. So what is the point? I asked. My voice was steady now. That I stay available? That I stay small enough to fix your scheduling problems? That my future comes last behind everyone else's convenience? Mom's voice cracked with practiced hurt. Why are you making this into a drama? We needed you. Your family needed you. Brooke stepped forward, finger pointed at my chest. And now Dad's saying, maybe I shouldn't let you near the kids anymore, because clearly you don't care about them. Clearly you can't be trusted. The words hit harder than shouting. Not just blame, punishment. The threat of being cut off from her children. Like I was dangerous. Like I'd done something unforgivable by taking an exam I'd studied months for. I cared enough to arrange for Mrs. Patterson to check on them, I said, keeping my voice calm even though my hands were shaking at my sides. I cared enough to prepare breakfast before I left. I cared enough to not just abandon them while I went to save my academic future. What did you care about when you demanded I throw away my exam? You cared about your conference, your networking, your convenience. Silence. Then my dad stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood like a warning. That is enough. He pointed toward the stairs. You owe your sister an apology. Now. For a moment, I almost gave it. Muscle memory is powerful. 22 years of conditioning doesn't vanish overnight. Every instinct told me to apologize, smooth things over, be the peacekeeper. The words were right there on my tongue. I'm sorry. I should have handled it differently. Let's move on. But then I saw it clearly. If I apologized, today would become proof that my future was always negotiable, that I could be bent back into shape whenever they needed a babysitter or a scapegoat, that no matter what I built, they could tear it down with guilt and obligation, and the word family wielded like a weapon. I lifted my chin. No. The room went dead still. I don't think any of them had ever heard me say that word before. Not like that. Not without softening it with explanations or apologies or compromises. And in that silence, I realized this family had never learned how to deal with a version of me that doesn't bend. Dad's face changed first. Not anger. Calculation. If you're going to live in this house, he said slowly, measuring each word, you follow this family's, Mom added, softer but just as sharp. Families make sacrifices, Jenna. That's what love means. I laughed once. It slipped out before I could stop it. Not funny, just tired. So tired of hearing the same manipulation dressed up as wisdom. So that's it? My education is optional, but Brooke's convenience is mandatory? Brooke crossed her arms. You're acting like a victim. No one forced you to stay here all these years. You could have left any time. You chose to stay and take advantage of free housing. That landed hard, because it was half true and half cruel. I had stayed. I had accepted their help, but I'd also been the one who helped with every family crisis, every last-minute need, every time someone required something, and I was the only one available. Dad walked to the hallway cabinet and pulled out an envelope. My name was on it. My scholarship paperwork. The documents I'd asked him to mail months ago. The ones he promised were already sent. My stomach dropped through the floor. I didn't submit these, he said, holding the envelope like it was evidence of my crime. I was waiting until you showed more commitment to this family, until you proved you could be counted on. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. You used my future as leverage? Mom whispered from behind him. We just wanted you to prioritize what matters. We just wanted you to be part of this family. Something cold settled in my chest. They hadn't just asked me to miss an exam. They'd been controlling my options the whole time, holding my scholarship hostage to keep me compliant. Every time I'd wondered why I hadn't heard back from the financial aid office, every time I'd assumed it was just processing delays, it was actually my own father sabotaging my future to keep me under control. I picked up the envelope with hands that shook with rage. You don't get to decide my life anymore. Dad's voice hardened like concrete. Then don't expect our support. Don't expect this home. Don't expect anything from us. I looked at each of them, at the people who raised me to be useful, not loved, at the sister who saw me as staff, not family, at the parents who measured my worth in favors, not achievements. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about babysitting. This was about ownership, and I was done being something they thought they owned. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. I took the envelope, turned, and walked to my room. Back straight, step steady, hands numb. Inside, I locked the door and slid down against it, breathing like I'd just run a marathon instead of crossed a hallway. My whole body shook. The tears came then, silent and hot, but I didn't have time to fall apart. Not yet. I opened my laptop with shaking fingers and logged into my school portal, already knowing what I'd find. Application status: incomplete. Documents missing. My throat closed up. Months of work, years of planning, all because my father wanted to teach me a lesson about family loyalty. Then I saw the deadline. Midnight. 3 hours away. I wiped my face, scanned every paper in that envelope with my phone, uploaded the files one by one, typed until my wrists ached, filling out forms I thought were already completed months ago, double-checked everything twice, triple-checked the important parts. When the confirmation screen finally popped up, I pressed my forehead to the desk and whispered, "Please, please let this work. Please let me not be too late." Outside my door, I heard Brooke's voice drifting up from downstairs. She's being dramatic. She always does this when she doesn't get her way. Give her a few days, and she'll come crawling back like she always does. I smiled through tears, because for once I wasn't doing this for them to notice. I wasn't being dramatic for attention. I was fighting for my life, and for the first time, I was the only one who knew it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Hi, this is the University Housing Office. We received your emergency accommodation request. We have availability in the residence halls starting tonight if you need it." Emergency? I hadn't meant my application to sound that urgent. But then again, maybe it was. Maybe I'd been in an emergency my whole life and just didn't recognize it. "Yes," I said. my voice steadier than I expected. I can come tonight. When I opened my bedroom door an hour later with my backpack on and a suitcase in my hand, my dad was standing in the hallway. He looked shocked, genuinely shocked, like he'd expected me to come down and apologize by now. You're really leaving? I met his eyes. The same eyes I'd spent 22 years trying to earn approval from. Eyes that had never once looked at me with the pride they showed Brooke. I already left, I said. A long time ago. You just didn't notice. And this time, no one told me to come back. The dorm hallway smelled like detergent and new beginnings. Someone was laughing behind one door. Someone else was crying behind another. It felt strange how normal the world stayed, while mine was breaking and rebuilding at the same time. Other students passed me carrying laundry baskets and textbooks, living their regular lives, having no idea that I'd just walked away from everything I'd ever known. I dropped my bag on the narrow dorm bed and finally let myself breathe. The room was small, bare walls, basic furniture, a window overlooking the parking lot. It was nothing like my room at home. It was better, because it was mine, really mine. Then my phone lit up. Brooke, Dad says if you don't come back and apologize, they're cutting you off completely. No more help, no more home, no family. This is your last chance. I stared at the word family like it was written in a language I didn't speak anymore. I typed back. You already chose who matters. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then finally. You know I didn't ask for this. You could have just helped, like always, like you've always done. None of this had to happen, like always. There it was again. The expectation that my existence was a service, that my purpose was to make their lives easier, that I had no right to dreams of my own. I typed, then deleted, then finally sent. Loving you shouldn't mean losing myself. Minutes passed. The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then the message that changed everything. From my mom. If you walk away now, don't bother coming back. Don't call us when you fail. Don't ask for anything. We're done. I felt the last thread snap. Not loud, just clean. Like it had been fraying for years and finally gave way. I set the phone face down on the bed and sat in the quiet, realizing something terrifying and freeing at the same time. They thought this was punishment, but what they were really giving me was permission. Permission to build a life that didn't revolve around their needs. Permission to stop apologizing for having ambitions. Permission to be someone other than the backup plan, and I was about to use it. 2 weeks later, my phone rang during a study break in the campus coffee shop. Dad's name. I almost didn't answer. My thumb hovered over the decline button for a long moment before curiosity got the better of me. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Your mother's car broke down across town. We need someone to pick up Brooke's kids from school. Brooke's stuck at work. We thought maybe you could help. Just this once. Just this once. The same words they'd used every time they asked me to shrink. Every time they asked me to put my life on hold. Every time they treated my time like it was worthless. I closed my notebook slowly. Around me, the coffee shop hummed with quiet ambition. Students building lives no one had put on pause. Laptops open. Books spread across tables. Everyone working towards something. I have class, I said. He exhaled, frustrated. Jenna, be reasonable. Family is... I know, I cut in gently. Family comes first. That's what you always told me. Right before you told me my exam didn't matter. Right before you admitted you'd been holding my scholarship hostage. Right before you gave me an ultimatum and expected me to fold. Silence on the other end. Then Mom took the phone. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. So you're really doing this? Punishing us for caring about you? I thought about how far I'd come. My exam results posted yesterday. A solid A. My housing was approved for the rest of the semester. My part-time job at the library was going well. I was building something. No, I said. I'm not punishing you. I'm choosing, she whispered. After everything we did for you. And that's when it finally came out. Calm and steady and unshaken. You did what benefited you. You held my future over my head. You made me feel guilty for having dreams. You treated me like staff instead of family. I'm doing what saves me. Another pause. Dad's voice again. Rougher now. So you won't help, even now. Of course, I said softly. My mother's breath hitched on the other end, thinking she'd won. I won't. The line went dead. They hung up on me. I went back to my notes and kept studying. 3 months passed. I got an A on my corporate finance final. My scholarship was approved with barely a day to spare. I moved into a small apartment near campus and got a part-time job at the university library. My family went radio silent. No birthday wishes. No holiday invitations. Nothing. Then things started getting interesting. Last month, I ran into Mrs. Patterson at the grocery store. She hugged me and told me she was proud of me. Then she lowered her voice. Your father came by my house last week. Wanted to know if I'd been in contact with you. Asked me to give you a message. What message? She shook her head. I told him if he wanted to talk to his daughter, he could do it himself. He didn't like that much. I bought her groceries, and we parted ways. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my university's financial aid office. Someone had called pretending to be me, trying to get information about my scholarship status and living situation. The office flagged it as suspicious and wanted to verify my identity. I called them back, confirmed who I was, and asked if they had any details about the caller. Female voice, older, asked very specific questions about whether I was struggling financially and if there was any way to redirect communications to a family member, my mother. I thanked them for the heads up and added a security note to my file requiring photo ID for any changes. A week after that, Brooke's name popped up on my phone. First contact in months. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Her voice was raw. Greg left me. I waited. He moved out last Tuesday, said I was too controlling, too demanding, too focused on myself. She laughed bitterly. Mom and Dad are furious. They keep telling me I should have tried harder, that I drove him away, that this reflects badly on the family. I leaned against my kitchen counter. Sounds familiar. Silence. Then, quieter. Is this what it felt like? When they blamed you? Every day. For 22 years. She started crying. I didn't know, Jenna. I didn't see it. I was so busy being their perfect daughter that I never noticed what they were doing to you. I know. Can we meet? Please? I need to talk to someone who isn't going to tell me this is my fault. I thought about it. This was the same sister who laughed at my exam, who called me selfish, who threatened to ban me from her kids. But she was also the first person from my family who'd called without wanting something from me. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Main, I said. Saturday at 2, 1 hour, no family drama, no favors, just talking. Okay, she sniffled. Thank you. I hung up. Saturday came. Brooke showed up 10 minutes early, looking like she hadn't slept in a week. No makeup, hair in a messy bun. She looked more human than I'd ever seen her. We sat across from each other. She ordered a latte with shaking hands. So, she said, how do you do it? Do what? Survive without them. Build something on your own. Not crumble when they cut you off. I sipped my coffee. It's not easy, but it's easier than staying. She nodded slowly. Greg said something before he left. He said I treat everyone like they exist to serve me. Like their needs don't matter unless they align with mine. She looked at me. That's what I did to you, isn't it? Yes. Her eyes filled with tears again. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I let that sit for a moment. Apologies are a start, I said, but they're not enough. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your babysitter. I'm not someone you call when you need something fixed. I know. Do you? Because the second mom and dad forgive you for the divorce, you might slide right back into being their golden child, and I'll be the villain again. She shook her head. I don't think that's happening. Dad told me last week that if I'd been a better wife, Greg never would have left. Mom said maybe I should call him and apologize. Try to win him back. She laughed hollowly. For the family's reputation. Sounds about right. I always thought they treated me better because I deserved it. Because I did everything right. But it's not about deserving anything, is it? It's about being useful to them. Now you're getting it. We talked for 2 hours. Not about the past. About what comes next. She's looking for an apartment. Talking to a lawyer about custody. Figuring out who she is without Greg. Without our parents' approval. Without the golden child pedestal. At the end, she stood up and looked at me. You really do look different. Happier. I am. I want that. Whatever you found. I want to find it too. Then stop waiting for permission. She nodded, hugged me awkwardly, and left. I don't know if Brooke will actually change. People usually don't. But for the first time, she's seeing the same cage I escaped from. What she does with that is up to her. As for me, my grades are solid. My job is steady. My apartment is small, but it's mine. Last week I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. Inside was a single photo of me as a kid, maybe 5 years old, sitting on my dad's lap at Christmas. On the back, she'd written, "We miss who you used to be." I looked at that photo for a long time, at the little girl who hadn't learned yet that love in this family came with conditions, who still believed that if she was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, she'd finally matter. I put the photo in a drawer. Then I texted Brooke. Dinner next week? She replied in seconds. I'd like that. Maybe I can't fix my parents. Maybe they'll never see me as anything more than the daughter who walked away. But Brooke might actually make it out. And honestly, helping someone escape the same trap I did, that feels like the best kind of payback. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.